Hello and welcome to the analysis of the Hindu newspaper dated April 13, 2023. In this video, we are going to talk about the important newspaper articles which are present in the Hindu newspaper, which are going to be very important, very significant for the civil services examination. So let's start with the first important newspaper article. Now, this particular newspaper article deals with the consumer inflation, or we can say the retail inflation, and it basically says that it has slided below the 6% mark for this year, for the first time this year. And this article becomes important for the GS paper 3, that is Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development and employment. Let's first understand the context of it, and then we are going to talk about the other figures mentioned in this article, and then we are going to also understand what exactly is this inflation, what are the types of inflation, and what are the types of inflation indexes, right? So let's start with the context first. So now the India's retail inflation slid below the 6% mark for the first time in 2023 and only the third time in the last 15 months to touch 5.66% in the March 2023. Right. So now the drop was aided by base effects as the month had recorded an almost 7% price rise last year. So basically what this particular article is saying that whenever you calculate the inflation, you are going to take the base year of the last year, right? Base of the last year, which means that March 2022, we will compare it then to the March 2023 and we will see what kind of a percentage increase is there, right? So basically what happened in the March 2022 is that there was an inflation of 7%. Now if you compare that to the next year, or if you take the base to that next year, then it is going to basically be low, right? So now India's retail inflation, that is why, is below the 6% mark, that is 5.66% for the March 2023. So now March inflation level was last seen, or this kind of inflation, this kind of low inflation was seen in December 2021, following which the prices rose at a pace faster than the central bank's upper tolerance limit or upper threshold of 6% for 10 months in a row. And despite the moderation in the last month of the fiscal year, India's consumers have faced an average inflation of 6.66% through 2022 to 2023 year, right? So now this is higher than 6.5% average price rise projected by the Reserve Bank of India in February. And if we talk about the rural inflation, then the rural inflation has basically slided from 6.72% to basically 5.51%, which is a good news for the rural consumers. But at the same time, the urban inflation has also dropped, but it has not dropped very significantly. Right, it has shown a drop of from 6.1% to 5.89% over the same period. Now, these are the basic details regarding the inflation numbers which have been mentioned in this particular newspaper article. But what exactly does the inflation mean? So inflation basically means the rate at which the prices for the goods and services rise and purchasing power decreases. Basically what it means that purchasing power is decreasing and at the same time prices of the goods and services are increasing, which means that you have less money as compared to what you had in the last month if there's any kind of inflation. So inflation is sometimes classified into three types, that is the demand pull inflation, cost push inflation and built-in inflation. We are going to talk about all of them, but before that we need to understand that the inflation is measured by two indexes. The first one is the consumer inflation or the consumer price index, and then we have the wholesale price index, and basically on these basis the inflation is measured. First one is called the retail inflation or the consumer inflation, second is the wholesale inflation, right? So these numbers are very, very important for us, and in India we measure the inflation in terms of the consumer inflation because it gives a wider picture of whether the inflation is happening at the consumer level or not. So now what exactly are the causes of inflation? First thing first is printing and giving away money to the citizens. If you increase the money supply to the citizens, if the central bank prints basically more money, then what will happen? The supply of the money will increase. People will buy more goods, they want more goods, and the prices will rise of the goods because the demand for the goods is more. right? So the second one now is the legally devaluing of the legal tender currency. You are not basically floating in the currency, you are not allowing the free market to operate, you are just basically legally by the government you are devaluing the currency. This is how also inflation can happen. The third one is the loaning new money into existence, as the reserve account credits through the banking system by purchasing government bonds from banks on the secondary market. What you are increasing? You are increasing the money flow in the economy. Whenever the money flow is going to increase in the economy, what is going to happen? Growth is also going to happen, but at the same time inflation is also happening. So these are basically three causes of the inflation. Now let's talk about the types of inflation. So the first one we have mentioned is the demand pull inflation, right? So when the demand for goods and services exceeds the production capacity, then that is called the demand pull inflation. Whenever the people have a lot of money but the products are not that much, or the production capacity is limited, then that is called the demand pull inflation. The second one is the cost pushed inflation. Whenever the production costs are going to increase, then that is also known as the cost push inflation, that is known as cost push inflation. Now the third one is the built-in inflation. When the prices rise, wages rise too in order to maintain the living cost, and that basically causes a spiral effect. Now let me repeat it. First, the prices are rising and at the same time wages are increasing, and with that the inflation is increasing because people are demanding more of the products, and this basically spiral goes on and on because the prices are rising, wages will increase, and then the inflation will happen at a faster pace. Now these are the three kinds of inflation, right? They can be separated from each other, as well as they can coexist with each other and basically causing the spiral of the inflation, right? So we have talked about the types of inflation. Let's talk about the types of the price indexes on which basis the inflation is there. First one is the consumer price index. So CPI is basically a measure that examines the weighted average of price of basket of goods and services that are of primary consumer needs at the consumer level. Whatever the basket of goods is there, that is known as the CPI. They include, this particular basket of goods include transportation, food and medical care, which are basically very important for us, right? So this is called the consumer price index, and the inflation associated with it is called consumer inflation or retail inflation. Now we have the WPI or the wholesale price index. Whatever the activities or the goods of basket which is present at the wholesale level, wholesalers sell it to the retail people, right? That is what you know. So the wholesale means the wholesale prices, right? So whenever there is going to be changes in it, that is going to be basically measured by the wholesale price index, and the inflation which is associated with is called wholesale inflation, right? So this is it regarding this particular newspaper article. We have talked about the causes of inflation, we have talked about the inflation figures, we have talked about the causes of inflation, we have also talked about the types of inflation, which are basically three: demand pull inflation, cost push inflation and built-in inflation. Then we have the types of price indexes, which are basically CPI and WPI, and the inflation associated with are called the retail inflation and wholesale inflation, right? So this is it regarding this particular newspaper article. And for today there were not many important newspaper articles which are basically present in the newspaper, and that is why we have skipped all of these newspaper article and I have explained you the inflation, right? So this is it regarding this particular video. So thank you from my side. Do like and share the video and subscribe to this channel. Have a good day. Bye.